players we are fading at each position. Up next on Fantasy Baseball Today Express. Welcome into FBT Express on Sunday, March 8th. I am Frank Stampfl, joined by Chris Towers, and let's do it, Chris. Fades at each position. We will start with catcher. Who you got?
But we're going to get yelled at. No, Alejandro Kirk is the easiest fade at the catcher position for me, assuming, it depends what format you're drafting at. If you draft over at the NFBC, his ADP is the number 12 catcher off the board, right around 150th overall. I just can't get on board with that. Alejandro Kirk is like classic number 2 catcher. He's perfectly fine, but he's not particularly good. You'll get a decent batting average, but everything else will be pretty subpar. When we've got Francisco Lindor and Carter Jensen and Samuel Basallo and Gabriel Moreno and Kyle Teal, and there's a lot of interesting catchers this year. I can't take Alejandro Kirk over any of those guys.
Yeah, the fade for me is one that people won't like, and that is the big dumper, Cal Raleigh, an ADP of 13.4. I just think it's very obvious he's going to regress. Regress to what? Maybe he hits 40 home runs and goes back to his 230-ish batting average, and he still might be the number 1 catcher in fantasy, but is that worth a second-round pick? I don't think so. So Cal Raleigh, going to be a fade for me. Let's go over to first base. Who do you have here?
I kind of think you can fade all 3 of the top guys, at least at their current prices, right? Because Nick Kurtz and Vladimir Guerrero are like top 20 picks. Pete Alonso, like top 25. I don't think any of those guys are so much better than the tier behind them that you have to reach for them. But Nick Kurtz specifically, even if he's still very good in 2026, he's probably not going to be anywhere near as good as he was last season. The batting average could be a liability. Look, 40 homers is 40 homers. He's probably not going to be bad, and I think he's a very good bet for 40 homers, but you're not getting any steals. You're probably going to get a pretty bad batting average. For a second-round pick and a mid-second at that, I think he's a fine pick around the 2-3 turn, but he's going too high for me.
We are in agreement. Nick Kurtz's ADP 18.4. The strikeout rate got worse down the stretch last year. The XBA was more like 245. So no doubt in the power, but I think it could be a lower batting average here and lots of strikeouts for Nick Kurtz. And he's just one of the least proven players going in the early rounds. So typically that player is not for me. Let's go over to second base. Chris, who are you fading here?
Cedar Rafaela feels like an easy one. He's got some speed, a little bit of pop, but he's not really a standout in either. Last year it was 16 homers, 20 stolen bases, came with a 249 batting average. The underlying numbers suggest he was probably a little lucky to hit 249. I think there's a world where Cedar Rafaela is just a below average player pretty much across the board. Maybe stolen bases are somewhat valuable, but he's not going to be a standout there. So Cedar Rafaela is a fairly easy fade for me.
I don't have a great answer at second base. I will say Bryce Terang. His ADP is 45.6. Again, I'm not very convicted in this pick, but it's, how much of the power was real last year. It does help that he showed up and hit 2 400-plus foot home runs already in spring training, but I do have some questions about what type of skill set? Who is Bryce Terang this year? So as a result, I'm just probably not going to use a 4th-round pick on him. Let's go over to third base. Chris, who are you fading at third?
It's Noelvi Marte, who's a somewhat interesting young player who I think, in theory, I like. There's, some pop, some speed. There's some decent bat-to-ball skills, at least what he showed last year. But we basically have 3 stretches at the major league level. He was pretty good in 2023 when he got called up for the final 35 games. He was a disaster in 2024 when he got called up. 2025, he's pretty good in July. He's very good in August, hits 297. And it's like, okay, I can start to buy in. The underlying numbers look pretty good. And then September, he just falls apart. He puts up a 501 OPS. It's a 233 expected WOBA over his final 100 plate appearances, basically covers the entire month of September. The swing and miss came back. This is a guy I would feel okay. Noelvi Marte taking like a 160, 170 flyer. He's like a top 125 pick right now, so I can't get on board with that.
Yeah, at third base, Alex Bregman in Wrigley. Look, I don't think he's going to completely fall apart there, but going from other stadiums that have played very well for his swing as a pull-heavy right-handed hitter and now going over to Wrigley, I just expect the numbers to come down a little bit across the board. He still has an ADP inside the top 100, so he hits 250 to 260, around 20 homers. Counting stats should still be all right. Fine points league player, but in a category as the league, I just feel like there are more players to get excited about going inside of the top 100. Let's take a quick break, and we'll return right after this.
This is why we do this every March.
Major slam!
It is a basketball party.
It's March! Expect the unexpected!
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball Today Express, going over the players we are fading at each position. And let's take a look at shortstop. Chris, who are you fading at shortstop?
There's nobody I'm really actively avoiding at shortstop, but it's pretty unlikely I'm going to be drafting Jacob Wilson, whose ADP is about 170 right now. I think he's fine. I think he's kind of a one-trick pony. He will give you a very good batting average. I don't really buy that he's like a 15 homer guy like he looked like last season. If you look at the underlying quality of contact metrics, he actually doesn't even hit the ball as hard as Luis Arias on average. It's 84.6 miles per hour average exit velocity. He doesn't hit the ball to the pull side in the air particularly often. Last year it was 9.3 expected home runs compared to 13 actual home runs. I just think you're getting Luis Arias in Jacob Wilson, and we've all agreed that Luis Arias is no longer particularly interesting, and Luis Arias at least is going to have second base eligibility. So, yeah, I can't get excited about Jacob Wilson.
Yeah, Chris, you might want to go for a walk when I talk about this next player. Geraldo Perdomo is the player I'm fading at shortstop, an ADP of 61.2. Coming off the career year, I just don't see enough in the underlying numbers to support what he did. The average exit velocity, the barrel rate, still just not great. I think the power is going to come down. Maybe it's like 12 to 15 homers. Should still run a little bit, like 15 to 20 steals. I just think he comes down across the board, and you're paying for the career year that we just saw from Perdomo. So it's a no for me, dog. Let's go over to the outfield. Chris, do you have a name or two that you fade in the outfield?
Yeah, O'Neal Cruz for sure. I think that's maybe my biggest fade in fantasy this season. There was maybe a little bit of bad luck in him hitting 200 last season, but his expected batting average was 218, so it's not like it was good. It's not like we'd be happy if he hit 218 last season. It's a 7th percentile mark. He strikes out as much as anyone in baseball. He has shown, I think it's fair to say, no ability to hit lefties at the major league level. It's not like he's such a good defensive player that he has to stay in the lineup. I think there are real downside risks for O'Neal Cruz where he's just straight up not in the lineup every day. I know the underlying skills, the athleticism is very impressive, but there are so many ways things can go wrong for O'Neal Cruz and not a demonstrated ability for things to go really right. And he's a top 100 pick, so.
Yeah. For me, Riley Green, who has an ADP of 60.2. I know he's coming off another career year here, who clearly traded off some contact ability for home runs and leaned into that power approach, but even the batted ball data didn't really excite me, and he regressed in the second half. And I just see a world where he goes back to the hitter that he was in 2024. And then if he does that, he's not worth anywhere close to top 60 picks. So just another player I don't want to buy coming off the career year there in Riley Green. What about at starting pitcher, Chris? Do you have a few names here that you are fading at SP?
Yeah, the most obvious one would be Spencer Strider, who we talked a lot about on the full episode of FET on Friday. I would be okay with taking a flyer on Spencer Strider if it was like the 45th pitcher off the board. But we saw a whole season from him in 2025 where he just did not look like the same guy. His fastball went from being a legit plus pitch to average, maybe worse once you account for his pretty poor command. And so far, 2 spring starts, I haven't seen any reason to believe that that's going to be different this season. I know he's holding back. He's not pitching full effort yet, all that stuff. That's fine. But when I'm talking about a top 25 or top 30 starting pitcher, which is where Strider is still going, I just can't justify a complete blind faith pick for someone who has not looked like a difference-making pitcher in over 2 years. I'll also throw Zach Wheeler in there just because he still costs around 125th pick. Him and Strider actually, over the last week at NFBC, back-to-back at starting pitcher, right around 30. And I just have to see something from those guys to justify that kind of price. For me, it's if they were 40th, that's fine, but there's plenty of upside in that range of pitchers. You got Nick Lodolo. You got Jacob Misiorowski. Michael King, we've seen be an ace. Like, maybe Zach Wheeler and Spencer Strider have higher ceilings if they can get back to who they were before injuries, but I don't know if they can. So I just can't justify that cost.
Chris, I know you can relate to this for those watching on YouTube. You might see my eyes light up, and I'm looking in the corner of my room. My cat is currently trying to break my door down. She is the hungriest cat right now that has ever lived. She is just barging it down.
How dare you not feed her?
It is insane stuff. Pitchers that I am fading here, Nick Pivetta, who is going inside the top 90 picks. BABIP,
same for me.
BABIP was low last year. The xFIP, the xERA, they were both a run higher than his ERA last season. So I don't think he's going to crush you by any means. I just think that we're going to get some regression here. Maybe it's an ERA in the 3.6 to 3.8 range. Probably is still a good whip, but is that someone who should be drafted as the top 24 starting pitcher? Probably not. And then Sonny Gray is the other name that I'll mention. ADP on Fantasy Pros is right around 100. He's a top 30 starting pitcher, and he's getting a little bit older. The fastball velocity is declining. That fastball got destroyed last year. Now he's going back into the AL East where he'll have to face, I know it's a more balanced schedule, but still a few times per year I'll have to face the Yankees and the Blue Jays and the Orioles. And we just saw some of these snowball starts last year where things just really, really got out of control for Sonny Gray. So I think the strikeouts will be okay for him, but the ERA and whip, a little bit of risk there with Sonny Gray. How about some relievers? Any names here that you are fading?
Yeah, me and everybody are fading Carlos Estevez of the Kansas City Royals.
Guilty.
His velocity's way down this spring. He had a 2.54 ERA last season, I believe, led the league in saves. That was all great. The underlying numbers were significantly worse. They were actually pretty bad. I think there's a pretty good chance Carlos Estevez is not even close to the best reliever in the Royals bullpen, which, hey, that doesn't mean he's going to lose his job, but I think he does not have a wide margin for error. I will be trying to draft Matt Strahm at the end of a lot of drafts.
Yeah, I have Carlos Estevez on this list as well. The other one is Aroldis Chapman, who is coming off one of the best seasons of his career, and this is a Hall of Fame worthy resume if you just look at what he's done on the field in his career for Aroldis Chapman. But he made huge strides in control last season. I just don't know that he's going to be able to maintain that. If you look at the pitcher he was from 2021 to 2024, the walks were untenable at points there for Aroldis Chapman. So, as the 7th or 8th reliever off the board, top 85 pick, I want to be more pick and choosy about the relievers and the closers I draft this year, and so I'm fading Aroldis Chapman, Carlos Estevez, and even Devin Williams is someone I have questions about him pitching in New York this season.
Agree.
For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to our full-length podcast, Fantasy Baseball Today, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today Express, and we will be back again next week. Bye-bye.